We're about to meet three very different men. James Gosling is one of them. Now, Mr. Gosling might look like just another one of those bearded, balding, bespectacled North American computer geeks, and he'll tell you privately that's exactly what he is. What he won't tell you is that he's also been hailed as the best computer geek in the world. We're also going to meet Jim Clark, who may be one of the smartest businessmen in the world. For in one working day on Wall Street, he's reputed to have made, personally, about $100 million an hour. You'd probably be smiling, too, if you made that much money. And Bob Kahn, without doubt, one of the major pioneers of our time, the co-inventor of the technology that lets computers talk to each other, and in doing so, change the lives of Gosling and Clark and the rest of us. They each have doctorates in computer science, each spend their working hours dealing with ideas and concepts, and with three totally different approaches, they are, each of them, changing the future of life on the internet.
In a network of computers, it's not the MIPS and chips and whatnot that's most important. It's what goes on between the people using them that makes them really powerful. A reminder from Sun Microsystems, proud to support this PBS program.
I'm Scott Simon. You're looking at one of the most fertile valleys in America, but it's not best known for growing fruits or vegetables. This is Silicon Valley in California, the place where they harvest ideas and turn them into the future. We wanted to find out what seeds they're planting for tomorrow, so we've been spending time with three cyberspace entrepreneurs who've been cultivating the future for many years. Maybe by tapping into their ideas, we can envision the future of life on the internet.
I get a real kick out of sort of showing something to somebody and they just go, wow. There are very few bigger thrills than just a wow from somebody else.
Watch this very carefully, for if you've been on the World Wide Web recently, you'll see much more than just a couple of animated cats making noise. For this is the equivalent of the day motion pictures got sound, the day color came to television, the day you had your first real date. The web, since its inception, has been made up of static information you could look at and read, but what came up on your computer screen was not truly interactive. You couldn't get in and manipulate the material. James Gosling has changed all that.
You get different drums. Of course, it's the grunts that I like the best. It's really simple.
He has created a new computer language called Java, where, among other things, you can now make animated cats grunt and play along with various other musical instruments.
Yeah, if one actually had some talent, which isn't me.
He does, of course, have an immense talent.
Yes.
In fact, when some Silicon Valley wizard said Mr. Gosling was perhaps the world's greatest living programmer, his friends had the quote printed on his business cards. James Gosling refused to hand them out, even to the admirers who call him a god of programming.
I don't think I'm particularly a god of programmers. I think I'm a pretty good programmer. I wouldn't consider myself godlike. There are several godlike programmers out there, people that I think are pretty godlike. But I think what I do the best is sort of getting off the beaten track.
In internet development, James Gosling's new creation from off the beaten track is as important as a hearing aid would have been to Beethoven or radar to Christopher Columbus. And the ways we'll use Java-inspired sites appear endless. If you live, for example, in the San Francisco Bay Area, one day this might come in handy.
Subway lines in the Bay Area. You can see all the stations here going through East Oakland and back out across the Bay Bridge here. There's one crossing the bridge and one going down the financial district in San Francisco, heading out onto the bay. Imagine that you've got like a little handheld, and you're sort of walking down the street, and you're wondering, gee, can I catch the BART? It tells you what's going on in the real world with where all the trains are, and lets you relate it to where you're actually sitting.
He claims he gets a lot of his ideas by just going for a walk. But in what's become one of the legends of the internet, he came up with part of the concept for Java, believe it or not, at a Doobie Brothers concert.
I was sitting there in my seat sort of staring up at the lights, and it was a lot of fun. And I had all these ideas about networking and interconnecting things, just like watching the wires in the lights and watching the sort of robo cameras that they had controlling the system. And so these ideas, you know, and these things sort of percolating in your head, they sort of take over your life. And I mean, my wife is just always mad at me or annoyed because I'm always like really spacey. You know, it doesn't matter where I am. I can be driving down the road and the whole idea factory is just going nuts. And every now and then she says, "James, pull off the road. I'm driving," because I'm just not paying attention. And you know, the ideas just come from God knows where.
Born and educated in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, Mr. Gosling took his PhD at Carnegie Mellon with a doctorate thesis titled The Manipulation of Algebraic Constraints, whatever that is. Over the last 15 years or so, he's become something of a programming legend. He's vice president and fellow at Sun Microsystems. Yet as the geek's geek, James Gosling has managed to stay in touch with the rest of us by seeing the net less as a giant experiment and more as another consumer device, which to survive will need to be as stable, simple, and useful as his mom's toaster.
You know, pieces of software live for like a year or two, and then they're, you know, roadkill. In the consumer business, they're, you know, my mom's got this toaster that's like 42 years old. It's a great toaster, works just fine. Nobody's changed the wall plug. Nobody's, you know, really dramatically changed the shape of a slice of bread. And so all the interfaces that this toaster understands have been stable. And that kind of stability of interfaces is completely unheard of in the software business. So one of the things that went into Java really early on is a set of facilities for not only, you know, making interfaces between components really explicit, but dealing with how they evolve so that old things can talk to new things.
Part of the fallout of James Gosling's creation is that it could eventually free us from having to buy expensive smart computers and costly software. Because why would we need to spend a fortune on a lot of bells and whistles on one machine when we could simply go to the net and download each bell and each whistle as we needed them? Why buy a bus to go downtown when all you really need is a ticket? It's the simple originality and practicality of the concept that are Gosling trademarks.
The test for me is trying to like explain it to my mom in 25 words or less.
And just what 25 words or less would James Gosling use to describe Java to his mom? How would he explain the architecture he's created, architecture that's changing the very nature of the World Wide Web? We're waiting, James.
It's like opening up a book, and instead of seeing pictures that just sit there, the pictures are alive. And you can actually interact with the pictures, and you can talk to the pictures, and the pictures can be connected to something out there. And then I'd show her.
In the computer business, they say an entire generation lasts about 3 years. But it's taken only a third of that for one company to go from rented offices in this building to owning this building. And this one. And this one. Plus offices in London, Paris, Munich, and Tokyo. Which might explain that smile on the face of Chairman Jim Clark. If you read the business magazines, you might have heard of Jim Clark. He was an associate professor at Stanford who left in 1982 to found a company called Silicon Graphics. Last year, it had revenues of about $1.5 billion. But in 1994, Jim Clark quit as chairman of Silicon Graphics to set up another company called Netscape, which had investors pining and panting and putting up $2 billion within days of it going public.
The Netscape ride has been phenomenal. I knew it was going to happen. I could see it, maybe not you never see exactly how it's going to unfold, but I knew it was going to be an important thing, that what we were doing was really important, and that it was going to be big. You're in the middle of a tornado, and frankly, it's a phenomenon associated with how companies either engage the market or they don't. They either become the leader or they don't. And we're in it, and we got to hold on, because the tornado is a fast-moving thing.
The tornado that is the World Wide Web has been fueled by the software that is Netscape. It is one of the most mutually beneficial convergences in modern business life. When Netscape flooded the net with free software in 1994, Silicon Valley was skeptical. But in retrospect, it was a brilliant strategy, because as hundreds of thousands of ordinary people downloaded it without charge, companies that wanted to reach all those people had to buy the commercial version of the software. And Netscape, because it was easy to use and free, became the first browser of choice for 3 out of 4 in the internet population. It also became the industry standard for using the web. And Jim Clark became an industry standard in how to turn an idea into a $2 billion business.
It's like any other company. You just always have to be inventive and afraid of the competition. You know, the moment you become complacent and thinking you've solved it all is just the moment when you're going to be surprised and someone's going to come out of nowhere and take your market away. My philosophy is building companies that create markets, not inventing companies that go out and see a big market to capture from someone else. And, you know, that's what I did at Silicon Graphics, what we're doing here. And we become very, very defensive and protective of the markets we create. We don't want someone else to steal them from us, so we almost become paranoid about that.
Clark's instincts for success have made him one of the leading thinkers and innovators in the business of the internet. He's acutely conscious of where it fits in the bigger picture and where we are now.
We'll think of this period as a dramatic transformation period for telecommunications. What's really occurring, in my assessment, with the World Wide Web and more globally the internet, because the web, bear in mind, the World Wide Web is just a publishing protocol, a demand media retrieval protocol. You've got FTP for moving programs around, and you have email protocols for shipping messages around. You're going to have telephone running on the World Wide Web, on the internet, and you're going to have video conferencing. So what we're seeing right now occurring is a transformation from a predominantly voice-oriented telecommunications system to a data-oriented telecommunications system. That's what the internet is. It's just a data telecommunications system. And as a result of that, I mean, think about there's at least $2 trillion worth of economy in the world devoted to voice communications and telecommunications. Probably much larger than that, but it's at least that.
I think we do need to get out.
That entire industry is going to make a shift in the next 10 years. The first milestone has actually occurred, and that is the introduction of the web itself and making it easy to access by a wide variety of people. I think all consumer devices, televisions, telephones, essentially the ordinary home computer devices that you think of today as having a special connection of one form or another, will all connect into your data communications concentrator, which will be your PC. That PC will manage your retrieval of television programming or educational material or computer software or checking your bank account, retrieving anything else, any other kind of information from the web, doing telephone. I mean, this is what I believe. It's going to be essentially your communications resource. And all of these other things that you currently use as independent things, telephone system, cable television system, are all going to become one conduit. And the content going over that conduit will be what your PC manages, your personal computer manages.
So Jim Clark predicts that the internet will evolve as the new backbone for all our communication needs. Our computer access, our telephone, television, automatic bank teller, just about anything else, all in one appliance. And now that Netscape and Sun Microsystems have gone into a long-term business relationship with Java, he thinks it's the way we'll get our newspapers.
So this is the Raleigh, North Carolina News and Observer, and it's just a newspaper, but they've sort of spiced it up with a number of things. One is they've got this this sort of scrolling piece of text that tells you what all the top stories are. Congressional documents missing, a subpoena likely, British top story. Up here, there's a series of images of the late-breaking news, and it's sort of continuously updating all these little image clips to show you sort of what's hot in each of these different categories.
Next step will be video, and then will be true full-motion video on demand. So in 10 years' time, I'm absolutely confident that the internet will be the information highway that we've all been talking about for the last 5, 7 years. It will be the mechanism for delivering all of this to the ordinary consumer.
Mr. Clark's predictions for the net are taken seriously in Silicon Valley and on Wall Street. After all, this is the same Jim Clark that put Netscape on the stock market one day in 1995 and is reputed to have earned personally nearly $600 million in the few hours the market was open.
It's been consistent with what I expected, but it's a little bit of a surprise even at that, yeah.
Ah, yes, one of those pleasant $600 million surprises, which shocked everyone, even the man who had been partly responsible for the whole thing, Dr. Robert Kahn.
A simple way to interconnect computers and to form such a network.
If you're interested in the history of communications, this is an important piece of film. Computer scientist Robert Kahn explaining in 1972 how something called the Internet was going to work.
Interconnect each of the computers to each other to form a fully connected network.
This explanation of the technical breakthrough didn't make any of the business pages at the time. Wall Street didn't notice. The venture capitalists didn't rush to throw money at Bob Kahn. But this moment is to the Internet what the moon landing was to space travel. This was the first giant step for mankind in cyberspace.
Over here.
Dr. Kahn, with computer scientist and colleague Vince Cerf, invented the first Internet protocols, the standards that let different computers actually talk to each other. It was that breakthrough that made the whole thing possible. And while the blackboards have changed considerably since then, the basic concept of interconnected computers has remained much the same.
Oh, I knew the idea was extremely powerful, when I first had it. What I didn't know was, one, how practical it would turn out to be in terms of real implementation. What I didn't know was how much potential there might be in actually getting other people to buy into this general notion. And of course, when we started it, you have to recall, there was no notion of a local area net as we know it today. There was no notion of the gateway, in fact, or router. That was something we invented as part of that plan. There was no cost-effective form of computing around for the individual. I mean, the PC and workstation had not yet really been invented. This was, I think, perhaps still a gleam in the eyes of the folks at Xerox PARC and others. So, I mean, many other things had to happen technologically before this thing could possibly have been as large and as impactful a development as we've now seen it become.
Bob Kahn is now president of the Corporation for National Research Initiatives based outside Washington, D.C. Here they hope to lead the development of computer network research into the next stage, when the number of people using computers soars even higher than some of the pundits are now predicting.
If the personal computers get inexpensive enough, and I suspect they will, then I think the penetration will go up dramatically. Whether it gets to the 90 percentile mark where the telephones have got, who knows? Certainly a real good chance, in my view, that that could happen because, in fact, this technology is so powerful, there may be no need for all of these other conveyances. It can all be done and controlled and monitored through one central box that doesn't cost much and has got all this incredible power. It might even be the case that just like, a typical home today comes with electricity when it's built. It's sort of not something you decide, shall I put electricity in the house or not? It sort of comes wired. It's connected up to, a local infrastructure for water and sewer if it's there, almost always. It's not something you choose to do. It may very well be that a network connection like this turns out to be something that every home gets wired for, and what you pay for is the actual usage that you make of it.
We would put a little
The net has come a long way since Bob Kahn explained it for posterity on an old blackboard. And no one back in 1972 had any idea how far it would actually travel, or that we'd go from this to this. Jim Gosling's Java will now permit doctors to probe CAT scans on the web. Downloading CAT scans and medical information from thousands of miles away is not new. Being able to manipulate them is.
I'm able to, yeah. I mean, this particular CAT scan application here is one where you get like you can do a slice through the body here and then look at slices here. And you can sort of go up and down. And 5 years from now, you'll be able to take it, spin it around, strip off the layers. People have done all kinds of demos that look like that. They require like a $100,000 machine just to get started. You should be able to do that at home. A lot of people have been doing, cool stuff with, mounting cameras on places, and you can just sort of go and look at them. Those are just going to get better. You'll be able to sort of virtually roam the world and see, what the hell's the weather like on the beach in Thailand. And you'll be able to see the beach in Thailand now.
There seems little doubt that as the net grows in popularity, it will also grow in practical usefulness, becoming eventually a familiar fixture in our normal everyday lives. But the one major restriction to this happening is the speed of the bandwidth. For right now, there are times when waiting for a page to appear can seem interminable, even to the world's greatest programmer.
Waiting for Godot.
The bandwidth is simply a measurement of how much information can be transmitted in any given period of time. Right now, we're on the equivalent of an unpaved country road. What we'll need is a 10-lane freeway. It's the bandwidth connection speed that will have to get a great deal faster if we're to grasp the full consumer potential of the Internet. And Jim Clark is leading the charge to convince the communications industry to accept the inevitable.
We have a huge built-in inertia in our telecommunications infrastructure. It's been the same way for many, many years. What's happened in the last 20 years, or maybe especially the last 10 years, is a lot of the telecommunications infrastructure has been replaced with fiber optics. But fiber optics gives you such a huge capacity that we're not utilizing the vast majority of it. And yet voice tariff rates for ordinary telephone conversations continue to remain high, and these phone companies don't seem to have the motivation to bring the prices down and offer data services. So my biggest concern is getting them to see that this is an important thing for their future, and that they do it, because the future is going to switch to data very quickly. I'm trying to stimulate it to occur more rapidly, but I'm absolutely convinced it will occur, and those telecom companies that see that first will in fact prosper more.
As Jim Clark can testify, there are fortunes to be made by grasping and even creating the direction for the future of the Internet, but it is James Gosling who might have the key to what all that will really mean to most of us.
Lots of folks are working on like little handheld computers that are not really computers themselves, but they're more just like access portals into the web. And so the thing that you think of as your personal computer may not really even exist. It may, your personal computer might be something that you have on your desk at home or at work, but you may actually never even use it. Physically, why do you need to touch it when you can get at it from wherever you are? From whatever sort of access device is around, whether it's something in a car, something that's handheld, like cellular telephones. Lots of folks are starting to build cellular telephones that have more than enough guts in them to make them, web browsers. So that, you enter all the right passwords and bingo, you're able to, both search somebody's database of Chinese restaurants, and you're able to sort of get into your house system and start, turning on the hot tub or doing your monthly bills.
So it seems we are, all of us, heading towards a time when the Internet won't be something we still marvel at or worry over or grapple with or even make TV shows about, like electricity or television or the telephone or your relatives. It will simply be there. A generation from now, what James Gosling and Jim Clark and Bob Kahn and thousands of others will have orchestrated is a technology which will become invisible. Yet it will be a technology and a culture to which will be tied irretrievably, utterly, and everlastingly, and we won't even notice we're living life on the Internet. Now, if you want to see what Bob Kahn is up to these days, this is the site where he works today, the Corporation for National Research Initiatives. You can also read about everything that Dr. Kahn has done in his career right here on his personal homepage. This is one of thousands of individual homepages that are now on the internet. Jim Clark has his personal homepage too. Here it is, complete with childhood pictures. And all right, well, we can't get into that site right now. In any event, if you see that kind of message, you don't have to worry, haven't broken anything. It's usually just the internet's version of a busy signal. You can try again later, and we hope that's one thing we won't have to deal with quite so much in the future. If you have access to the World Wide Web, we've created a site for you. It contains links to everything we've seen, and here's how to find us on the web. http://www.pbs.org. I hope you'll click in. Until next time, I'm Scott Simon.
In a network of computers, it's not the MIPS and chips and whatnot that's most important. It's what goes on between the people using them that makes them really powerful. A reminder from Sun Microsystems, proud to support this PBS program.
This is PBS.